Could you start by telling us your name and the years you attended a one-room schoolhouse?
Sure, it's Lorraine Janack, and I was at V Corners School from 1950 to 1956.
Thank you. Do you remember the number or district that V Corners?
6.
Number 6. Thank you. And where was that school located?
It was on Route 67 at V Corners, which is the south end of Ballston Spa.
And how old were you when you first started there?
Let's see, I was 6.
And how did you get to school each day?
I walked across the street. We were right across the street.
Very fortunate.
Yes.
What do you remember about the building, inside and out?
Wow, that's I remember lots of stuff. I think probably part of the most interesting part would be that there was a boys section and a girls section. The girls section was on the right, boys section was on the left. We each had our own bathrooms. When you came into the school in the morning, the girls came in the girls' door, and at that time, you wore boots in the wintertime over your shoes. There was no such thing as shoe boots. So there were boots all over the place when you got there, and this floor was wet and it was a mess, and then you hung your coat up, and then you went into the big room, and the boys would do the same on their side. There was also chalkboards, which we called blackboards at that point because they were black, on the north side and the south side. And the east side were all huge windows. And that's where we'd do our artwork a lot, where we would put a picture up and then we would trace the picture up, a picture around there. On the other side was where the drinking fountain was and the bathrooms, the boys' room and the girls' room. And then there was a room in the middle, and that wasn't called the library, it was called the book room. So we weren't allowed to go in there and take books. But if the teacher wanted a book, that's where she would go for her resources. Teacher's desk was on the south side, and there was a cutout pretty much where when it was grade 5 to go up, for instance, all the kids from grade 5 would come up there was 30 usually, and then maybe there was 5 or 4 from grade 5, and they would go in this little cubby, and that's where the teacher would teach. The rest of us would either read, draw, keep ourselves occupied, or she would assign something for us to do. But that's the general layout.
And was there ever any intermingling among the boys and girls? What would happen if, got caught on the girls' side or the girls got caught on the boys' side?
I don't remember. I don't think it was pretty precise. She was very strict. She had a ruler that she would want to raise around. But nope. Intermingling wasn't, and of course the boys thought the girls were gross and the girls thought the boys were gross, so we didn't want anything to do with the nasty boys anyway.
And that has not changed much.
Yep.
What were the bathroom facilities like?
Well, each one had one seat. Of course, I only got to go into the boys section because we weren't allowed to go into those sections, but my dad for a while was the janitor, so he would go in and clean the toilet. So that was the time I got to see the boys, but it was pretty much similar to what the girls. It was kind of rustic, but it had a sink and a pot, and that was pretty much it.
What was a typical school day like?
Well, Miss Dickinson was wonderful. I just loved her. She was morbidly obese and kind of waddled when she walked. So she was kind of just the teacher, not an outdoors person. So recesses, we were pretty much on our own. And the bigger boys would pretty much organize that. But we would go in the morning and we'd take attendance. And it was here, and then occasionally somebody would say present. Here? So we'd make sure everybody was there. And we would do that after recess also, because there was places where you could go out of sight. So when you came back from recess, you would have to make sure that you were there. She would read everybody's name off. When recess was over, there was a huge bell she would ring. She must have had a really good strong arm because that thing was big and loud and bong bong. And when you heard that bell, that's when you came running. So we would go in and have a class. We had art, we had music. We had a teacher who came in, a Mr. Hayden, who was our music teacher, who would come in. I think twice a week he would come, and we'd sing songs that I've never heard again, but that were popular back then. We would break for lunch, and then have afternoon, and then a recess, and then we were out at 2:30, 3 o'clock.
So, a pretty good day, right?
Yes. Yep.
And you obviously different grades all went or were together in this one room schoolhouse. Do you remember how the grades were organized within the classroom itself?
You could sit anywhere, as I remember, but when it came time, she would say, okay, grade 3, please come up. Then people would come up and we would go into that little circle and study, and she would teach that grade. And it would maybe one day be reading, maybe history, maybe math, whatever.
And how do you think, how did the teacher manage lessons for multiple age groups at once, other than just calling them up, one grade at a time?
I have no idea how she managed to do it. There were different subjects, like art, for instance, we could all do together. Yeah. And it wasn't specialized. But I do say, having taught my grandchildren, that she was a great role model for that, because I would just go, how is she teaching all these kids at the same time, And so I think it was a learning experience, just a generalization of what was happening and how she managed to keep everybody quiet when the group that was studying was supposed to be geared in.
Which isn't so easy these days.
No, right.
What subjects do you remember studying?
Well, one of the things that I had forgotten about until I went over to the Charlton Historical Building not too long ago, were the maps on the wall. Those old, dusty things that you had a hook and you would pull it down. It would be the size of the wall. And it would be, there would be the world map. There was the North America map and the South America map and the Africa map, which I had forgotten all about that until I said, oh my God, I remember those maps. That was cool. And we would study Spain, for instance, and then she'd have a book on Spain. And that was one of the, history and geography was one of the things that she could teach to everybody, because the younger kids might not remember it all, but it was still getting a basis for what was coming next. So the next year, when you learned that, I remember this, and now you can extend on what you learned. So,
were students expected to do chores like bringing in wood or cleaning?
Basically, the job I remember was cleaning the chalkboards, the blackboards. Nobody wanted to do that because there was dust everywhere and people would be sneezing and hacking and coughing. There was a grate in the floor that, for the heater, I assume, and there would be pennies and nickels that would get dropped down there. And every month or so, I don't know whether it was a month, but every now and then we would get a ruler and put chewing gum on the end and go down and clean out and get the nickels and pennies out of the register that had fallen down. And then it was divvied up to whoever wanted to do that job. But as far as any other work, I don't remember anything else.
What was lunchtime like? And what did you usually bring?
It was a brown bag thing, or if you were lucky, you had a Roy Rogers lunchbox, or Dale Evans, or Hopalong Cassidy even. I think those were Mickey Mouse was a popular one. And then you had a thermos. Everybody had a thermos. There were some kids who couldn't afford a lunch. I can remember that we would share sometimes with kids that didn't have too much. And my mom would always pack a little bit extra for folks who didn't have it. And then there were some boys that just wanted to say, "Oh, I don't have a lunch today," and then you'd just kind of shoo them away. But
You've described your teacher a little bit. Can you describe her a bit more? What was she like? Her teaching style? Do you have any fond memories of her?
well, I just thought she was wonderful. I just loved her. She was, being an only child, she was the next person who I got to love and admire and watch and everything. She, lots of people didn't like her. I thought she was wonderful. It's interesting that when we get together, some of us now will talk about what she did and how she was, and then other people say, "Oh boy, yeah, blah blah." And I never really thought about the blah blah. I just thought about how she made me feel really good. And being petrified of everything and being skinny. I was a skinny little runt. She just kind of was the person who said it's going to be okay, and she always told my mom that I'd be a nurse or a social worker. She said that because of my heart. Because I would want to take care of the other kids if something went wrong. I would be there to help them out. She said, "Well, I would want her on my team." But teaching style, she was strict with the boys, probably strict with the girls if they needed it, I guess. But I was always a mousy little thing, so I never got in any trouble.
Did she live in the community?
Her home was in Hudson Falls, so she would get a room here in Ballston, and for a while she was housed with my girlfriend down the road a little ways. She lived there, and she had an old, it wasn't old then, it was probably a 1950 Buick, and we always got to know that the Buicks had the holes in the side. And I always could tell because of Miss Dickinson's Buick. Whenever I'd see a Buick, it's got holes in the side. It was like my teacher's car. But she was very. Her handwriting was beautiful. Kids don't even know how to write now. Now you just kind of scribble whatever you want. But the Palmer method, if you wanted to do that, you could. But her handwriting was so much, and she made us realize how much faster you can take notes if you write than if you jabber things down. But she was really enamored with the music teacher, Mr. Hayden, and they would sing songs together. And we would always go, "Oh my God, it's this stuff again." "I Love You Truly" and "Moonlight and Roses," or some songs that are not popular anymore. But we'd always kind of go, "Oh, okay." But they would harmonize, and that was kind of unfamiliar to us because it was just kind of singing the melody. That's what we did. But other than that, she used to love her sweets. And like I said, she was heavy set. And she would take a nap lots of times at lunchtime because we would have recess after lunchtime. And she would kind of doze off. Some of the times we'd come in and we'd know it was time to go back, but go back out again and she won't know. But then we'd have to make it up later because she'd just continue on to get the studies done.
Do you remember any rules or any sort of, discipline that she might have?
Well, I never got in trouble. When the boys would get in trouble, they'd have to wash her car.
Ah.
So that was one of the things. So her car was always clean. Somebody was always getting in trouble for something. We had swings that old-fashioned, of course, in the 50s, and they were metal and hard and not comfortable at all. But the boys would try to haul the girls around the top of the swing, and they'd get into trouble with that. And I don't really remember, other than washing her car, I know they had to stay over. Lots of times she would be always the guys that were having to stay over because she would keep them after school for something. And I don't know what they did. I wanted to go home.
I love that. And do you remember the age range of the students?
Well, it was grade 1 to 6, so I probably 6 to 11 or 12. Yeah.
And earlier, off camera, you mentioned how the older kids would often work alongside the younger kids and help them out. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I remember specifically art class because we had pollywogs and pussy willows. And it was funny that just recently, my granddaughters now are 20 and 21, and they never heard of a pussy willow. And they were giggling. And I said, what? What the heck? So I quick drew some pussy willows, and I said, this is what we had to do. First you had a light in the background, or you had a dark color in the background, and you would try to make the pussy willows look, and whenever you say that, they'd start giggling. I said, no, this is a plant. So we did a research thing on a pussy willow. And then the project in Ballston that was the highlight was the old iron spring. And we had a couple of guys who just did beautiful pictures of the old iron spring. I wish I'd have snatched them away because they were great. They were really great. But
watercolors?
Yeah, and crayons and chalk. Oh. Lots of chalk. Yep, multicolored chalk. And outside, speaking of chalk, we were always doing hopscotch and roly-poly. Those were the outside games because we had this huge sidewalk. So we were always doing different pictures. Yeah.
That was actually going to be my next question.
Okay.
What games or activities did you enjoy at recess?
All right, I got to tell you the baseball story.
Okay.
All right. So now I'm 6 years old, only child, never even saw a baseball. I mean, I played lots of stuff. I mean, jacks and things, tinker toys and Lincoln logs and all that. Lots of little card games, but I never played anything that was a team because it was just me. So I was handed this stick, and I was supposed to hit this ball. So I was really good at it. I hit the ball, and I just stood there. Well, you got to run. So I start running around. Oh, over there, go by the tree. Okay, so I ran over by the tree. Okay, just stay there by the tree. Okay. Well, somebody gets up, and they don't hit the ball, and I'm wandering around. And so finally, I just wander off to the next tree, and, oh, you're out. I said, I'm out of what? I didn't know I was in anything. What am I out of? Well, you're out. Get out of the game. Oh, okay. So then I started to cry, and I remember asking my father, what was I out of? And he's, oh, well, you can't wander off. Once you get to that base, you stay on that base. Okay. So the next day we get up. I hit the ball again. I was always a good hitter. I wound up playing shortstop in high school and was really good at that. Got lots of blue ribbons. But this year I wasn't. So I hit the ball. I get to first base, the tree. I didn't know that was first base. That was a tree. Run to the tree. Okay. Somebody gets up. They hit the ball. They come to the first base, and they're like, run. I said, nope, my father said I got to stay here. So I stayed there, and then, no, you got to run. You're out. And I said, what kind of stupid game is this? I'm out if I run. I'm out if I stay put. What kind of a dumb game is this? So then I go home, and I'm crying to my father. Oh, I don't know what to do. First time, what am I supposed to do? And he says, okay, this is how it goes. Okay. Well, it never dawned on me that there were two different teams and we were fighting against one another. So I thought we were all trying to hit the ball and get as many points as we could. But then there's all these people who are pushing me out and saying I'm out. And it's just very, very confusing for me. And it just went on and on. Catching the ball. Okay, do you catch the ball? Then what do you do with the ball? So I just stood there. Well, you got to throw it. I got to catch the ball and throw the ball? I didn't understand any of it. And finally, my father took me aside and spent quite a bit of time explaining to me that there's two teams, and it's not that they hate you or anything. It's just that everybody is supposed to get a certain amount of points. The boys would always hit the ball harder than the girls, and when they did, it would go in the poison ivy because the poison ivy was all over the other side. So we'd hit the ball, and if the ball went too far, and it was always the girls, of course, the boys didn't want the poison ivy, so they'd always tell the girls to go. So we were always covered with poison ivy, most of us, throughout our time. Yeah.
Side question. How did you, what did you use as a home remedy for that poison ivy?
There was something out there called Ivy Dry. It looked like iodine, and it smelled disgusting, but it really worked. But most of us were brown colored and scabby because we'd have roller skates on the concrete, the walkway. So we were always had scabs on our elbows and our knees. So we'd have brown legs, and yeah.
Love it.
Yep.
Do you remember any friendships, rivalries, or personalities that stood out to you?
Um, I guess I learned a lot about, there would be kids who would come to school who were dirty, um, wore the same clothes over and over again. And for a while, I just thought they were disgusting. And then I realized that they didn't have any other clothes, or they didn't have water that they could get to, or that their parents were drunk. So I guess I got a compassion for people that later on, the first 2 years, not 2 years or 3 years, but later on, I realized that these people were very nice, just as nice as the clean people and who had new shoes all the time. So I guess I often thought about how early I was mean to these people because, oh, go, you're dirty type thing. And then I realized that they didn't want to be dirty. That's the way their life was.
How did your teacher treat those children?
I thought she was wonderful with everybody. I thought she was good with everyone. And like I said, the friends now that I have who are still alive are friends from the one-room schoolhouse versus junior high or senior high. Those were kind of acquaintances that I learned later. But we were all a team at the one-room schoolhouse. We helped one another, and we listened to one another, and we cared for one another. And she was great. Miss Dickinson was wonderful.
Did that relationship extend for a long time after 6th grade?
The relationship with
the other students that you were in the one school?
Oh, yes. Yep. Diane Bartholdi, who is still a wonderful friend. Her dad was a business law teacher, driver ed teacher, and I don't know what else he taught for years and years in Ballston Spa. And she still has a gift at graduation in his name. So, but we're really close. We continue to be close. Another friend, the gal actually who housed Miss Dickinson for a while, she and I are still close. She lives in Pennsylvania now. And then my other close friend is in Amsterdam. So I can't think of anybody from high school who I'm close with. It's all people from the V Corner School.
What do you attribute that to? What bonds you, do you think?
Just learning life. We learned a lot about life. That's when your basic core starts, I guess. Just how to take care of one another and live with one another and listen to one another and how to play well. My mom was the unofficial school nurse. The school nurse was Miss Cody. And she was the ugliest, meanest looking person. She scared everybody to death. And she would come maybe twice a year and do the physical. And you'd just be standing there and she'd look you over and say, okay, you're passed, or you didn't, or your back is crooked or something. But if anybody got hurt, and that was often, Miss Dickinson would say, go see Mrs. Zahn across the street. And we'd have somebody help across the street because at one point, Route 67, there would just be an occasional car. Mm-hmm. Not like now, but there'd be an occasional car. And there was nothing to the north of us. There were no buildings. There was not even a house there. There was 3 houses on one side and then the school on the other. And then there were deer and antelope playing all over. There was nothing else. But she would go over, and my mother always kept a supply of Band-Aids and cold ice packs, so that when I got a broken nose with a bat one time because somebody came back. Oh, luckily didn't hit my teeth. I could have wound up with no teeth, but just broke my nose. And I remember going home with blood gushing out. My mother goes, oh my God, what happened? It was a baseball bat. He hit me with a baseball bat. And then we had a broken arm one time, so she would always kind of get things stabilized before the kid would get picked up by a station wagon and taken somewhere. I remember a gal got her end of her finger pretty much demolished with a teeter-totter, because we had teeter-totters and maypoles. That was dangerous. I didn't like the maypole at all, because you could get the boys, again, they would like to wipe out the girls on the maypoles. So I stayed away from those.
Can you explain maypole? Because most people won't.
Okay, it's a big pole that sticks in the ground, and ours was, I think, metal, heavy duty metal, and then it had chains that came down, and you would grab on a chain and run around, and you would get twisted or not twisted, and it was awful to me. I never found any fun with it, but you could run and keep your feet off the ground and get thrown around, but you get whacked into other kids, and I never saw what was the purpose of what the heck. It didn't mean anything to me. To me, it was just a torture device. But a lot of kids liked it, and especially the boys. It was a rough and tumble thing.
Thinking about, the community, how involved would you say that the parents and the community were within your schoolhouse?
Don't remember much other than we would have some visitors occasionally from the bigger school for the holidays, like Christmas in particular. There would be a singing group, and I don't remember who it was or what, and I don't remember it every year, just occasionally they would come in. We did have the fire truck come by one time, and we didn't have ambulance corps back then. I was an ambulance volunteer for 15 years and a first responder, but they didn't exist back then. It was throw somebody in the station wagon and take off. That was the ambulance. But the fire truck did come down, and we did have someone from the music department come and bring instruments, because we had no instruments there. We did have a piano, and Mr. Hayden would play the piano occasionally. But I remember touching a saxophone, being frightened of all the instruments, and one guy came down and played a violin, and that was amazing, because we hadn't been open to the arts at all. There wasn't anything other than a music teacher coming in, who was great. It was wonderful. I loved music, and I still sing in different groups, but Diane and I occasionally will come up with what were some of those songs that we used to sing, and because they just don't exist anymore. One of them was a Halloween song, and it sounds really goofy, but it was really scary. It was about a jack-o'-lantern that used to peek into people's windows in the song. And I remember not wanting to sing the song because it would make me frightened. And how goofy is that? But it was.
Did the schoolhouse serve other purposes for the community outside of the school hours?
I don't think so.
So what would you say is your strongest or most vivid memory from your time there?
I think love.
Oh.
Yeah, I got to say, when I look back, that there was so much feeling for everybody, and not necessarily when you would go there. Like, we didn't go in there and say, "Oh, I love you," or wasn't like that. It was inside. It was a feeling that you got from being there, and that people can work together. I can remember talking about war, and why do people have to fight? Why can't we be friends? There's a war here and a war there, and then Korea. Why is there a war? I just could never understand any of it. And the Civil War just blew my mind, where we were killing each other. How could we possibly submit ourselves to killing our own relatives? That's just blew my mind. The Revolutionary War, I guess I could understand, because we were being governed by somebody else and across. But still, and the Indians, why did we have to slaughter the Indians? Why couldn't we just come over and live all together? I just never understood any of it. I still don't. But back then, it was just incomprehensible that would be the case.
When did the schoolhouse eventually close?
It was that year. It was the 56, 57. It was closed then. And my dad was the janitor at that point because he was nearby and nobody wanted to do it. So he would go over and sleep, and I would be excited about going into the big classroom when there was nobody there because it's so big. There's one room.
And once centralizations took place, what grade were you in when that switch happened?
I spent sixth grade down at Malta Avenue. So, but I started school when I was 5, and I went into the first grade. So I did get held back one year because I was really young. So I still graduated at 17, which is the normal time. But something I forgot about when we were in the learning process was television was just kind of coming in. And I remember 2 things specifically that Miss Dickinson brought in this huge box with this little teeny screen. So there's this great big box and this little teeny screen. And we got to watch a historical thing, and it was called Drums Along the Mohawk. And it was with Henry Fonda and Claudette Colbert. There's somebody, John Carradine, I guess, was one of the actors in it. And I remember it was kind of boring, but then again, it was the war thing again. And why do we have to fight? Why can't we just all get along? If the coexisting thing, people are just meant to kill one another, I guess. And then the other thing we saw was in 1955, Miss Dickinson was a big baseball fan. And at lunchtime, she would go out in her car and turn her car radio on, and she would listen to a ball game if it was on, a Yankees fan. Well, 1955, the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Yankees played, and it went 7 games. And I remember my mother was rooting for a guy named Duke Snyder. He was the cat's meow. She just loved him. Well, it turned out the Dodgers won. And Miss Dickinson was really bummed out it was weeks. She was really bummed out for a long time. She just couldn't get her head up. She was ready to cry any second. But that was probably one of the last years, if not the last year, that the Dodgers were here before they went over to the West Coast. But I remember everybody was watching that little TV, and I was kind of ho-hum, about it. But that was okay. We got to watch TV.
What a treat. How did you feel about moving to that larger school?
Oh, well, as I was blessed with a wonderful teacher, she made it all worthwhile because it was super scary, and there was nobody in my class from the one-room schoolhouse, so I was totally like a fish out of water. And you didn't call them bathrooms, it was lavatory. But I got mixed up very often, and I would call it laboratory because I didn't know the difference between a laboratory and a lavatory. Those were kind of big words at that point, I remember. But I had another wonderful teacher. I really was blessed with my teachers. Were great. There were a couple in the super high school that I didn't particularly like, but in my early years, I had just wonderful teachers. And we went on, I was looking in my logbook here, we went on trips to the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. We went down to the Statue of Liberty, Grand Central Station. We took a train ride, went to Grand Central Station, and we went to WRGB in Schenectady. And field trips. I had never been on a field trip before. I didn't know what a field trip was. And she just wanted to take people all over. We went to the Cohoes Dam, hydroelectric power plant. Saw robots. Robot, oh my gosh. So it was kind of opening up a new thing, that it was, the one-room schoolhouse was just family. And then the bigger school was just, there's a great big world out there to
totally
see.
A different experience.
Yes.
Good and bad.
Yes. Yep.
How do you think attending a one-room schoolhouse shaped you? And I know you've touched on this a little bit already.
Yeah. I just loved the entire time I was there. I loved being able to talk to the kids. You could always, if you had a problem or a question, you could go and talk to them. Teacher was always there for you. It was a special thing. And I really don't know if after I was a secretary and a nurse and kind of then retired, just taking care of kids, if I've had the gumption to say, okay, I can be a teacher and then just go ahead and do it. I was a Sunday school teacher, so I'd been around kids. But as far as tackling subjects, but I always had a desire. I still do. I'm still learning. I think we learn forever. Every day there's something. Oh, I didn't know that. I can't remember. There was something big last week I learned. I should have tried to make a note of that, but that I didn't know. And I said, oh my goodness. But we just learn forever. And I don't think, had I not watched Miss Dickinson do what she did for so long, that I would have been able to be as successful as I was. I mean, 2 kids on the dean's list now. I'm super proud of that. Yeah.
What do you think younger generations should understand about that kind of education, that one-room schoolhouse dynamic?
I guess to open up more and feel more comfortable with people, because I never felt comfortable with speaking to anybody in the high school. I had, when I was in my later business classes and was excelling at that rather than flunking Latin, I could talk to people, but it was never the same. It wasn't like all your big sisters and brothers. They were all family. So, and if you didn't like something, you just say, "Oh, I don't like what you did there. Why did you have to say that or do that? I don't agree with it." But I wouldn't do that in the high school. You're apt to get your hand slammed on a locker or something. It was different. It was kind of a dog-eat-dog world after the one-room schoolhouse.
I think that's a good way of putting it versus this more collaborative kind of environment.
Mm-hmm.
And finally,
yeah,
you've done great, by the way. If you could step back into that schoolhouse for one day, what would you want to experience again?
Wow, that makes me want to cry. I'd like to sing the old songs and hear all those voices again that are gone. So many of the people aren't here anymore. And I've known over the years, some of them, what's happened to them, and life hurts sometimes. People suffer things, lose children of their own, and you can't, you just want to give them hugs. And how does that stop war somehow?
Lorraine, you've done an amazing job. You are a natural.
Oh,
This has been such a great experience. Did you have any follow-up questions?
And hopefully I was listening. Did you talk about, you talked about, recess and play, but you didn't talk about it for winter time.
Ah, good point.
oh, okay. Glad you brought that
And I
up.
did skip over that question because I know the wood stove, right? Was that a feature?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep. Wintertime, we all had sleds. One rich kid had a toboggan, and we had a huge hill in the back. And the trick was getting to the hill because there was kind of an old road that went to where we had to get to climb up on the hill. And then we would just sled and sleigh ride and sleigh ride and sleigh ride. And then we'd hear the bell, and then you'd have to have enough time to come in, and then to get all your stuff off. That was one of the things. When I was little, my mom and dad would always put my boots on, and my hats, and my coats, and my scarves, and earmuffs, and you'd waddle in. Well, to get out, you got to do that, and then you got to get back in again. So by the time you did it, one of your classes was starting, and I can always remember being frightened that she was going to start without me, or I was going to miss something. I'm struggling with my boots, and I can remember throwing my boots or my foot around trying to get out of my boots or into my boots. But
that actually leads me to a follow-up question. You lived across the street, but do you know how far some of the other kids had to?
Yes, I remember going over, and I can even tell you where all the kids lived because we just learned over the years where they lived. It was south of the village, so just a little, kind of where Dunkin' Donuts is now
Yeah.
on Route 50. All of those, and Curry Court didn't exist then. It wasn't in there yet. So there was McGinn's Trailer Park, and it was Donna McGinn. And then it went down to me, and then on Ballston Avenue, there's two little, there's Thomas Avenue, and the original Stewart's. That's the original Stewart store. And then there was Martin Avenue, and then there was Kids on Martin Avenue, and then Ballston Avenue. That's where Diane Bartholdi lived. And then down Route 50, down to Brookline, and that's where the Barnes family lived, and the Christensen family lived, the Barretts. And then across Brookline, and I can name all the kids along there. And then we went down to Eastline. There was there's a little underpass road that goes right across from Curtis Lumber. There were kids in there. And then up Route 67 to the school. So that was the group. So it started up and kind of went down and around, and that was it. The Eldridges, he became a garbage man, if the Eldridge garbage business means anything to you. Alfred and Anna, they were brother and sister. I don't know if they were twins, but he was kind of a rough and tumble guy. He was a big jowled guy. On the Tiffalt Road, which is right, plumbers. Naming names, it doesn't mean anything, but Tiffalt Road goes right off of Brookline, and there's 5 houses down there, and they used to come. There were a couple who used to come on the bus, but mostly it was people who walked. Yeah.
For those who wouldn't know the area, could you describe where the school was based on what's there now?
There's a huge, maybe 5-story monstrosity storage building right next to the schoolhouse. The schoolhouse now is a business. It sits back. And I, unfortunately, I have a picture, but when the people who bought it, I told them it was a schoolhouse, they couldn't believe it, so I gave them that picture. And they did give it back, but it got out of its element, and with my move, it's somewhere in my little library up there, and I could find it for you if it's important. But yeah, it's right next to the Maybe and the Dollar Tree or Dollar General, the Dollar General, and then that huge building. Yeah, they just cut down some trees to this, and the land to the south is for sale now. So I don't know if something's going to go in there, but that's all wetland, and it's been kind of protected because we used to ice skate in there. It's just a flat, wet area. You can go in there now probably, and you get the. We used to go and shovel the snow off, and it was wonderful.
Is the house you grew up in still there?
Yes. Yep. It is there. The gal who bought it is just starting her dog business. She had a dog business in Schenectady, and now she's going to, I assume there's going to be a sign out. But she bought, my house was for sale for a long time. It was this house I had to grab. So I was unbalanced for a while because I was paying on this house because I didn't sell that house. So I'm not rich enough to be able to just come up with the money to buy a new house. So I was uncomfortable for a while there. So the house did sell, and it went to the dogs. But I always had dogs, so I had a backyard and a pool, and 2 fenced-in areas, and lots of space for dogs. So she had a dog business, and she was very interested. The downstairs of my other house was a concrete floor, and it was a double garage, and then the living quarters were on the 2nd floor, and then I had a 3rd floor master bedroom. So she's there by herself, so she's got more space than she needs. But now she's got the ability to have the dogs in the downstairs and all the area. So she was a natural for that. So I'm glad. Of course, I loved dogs anyway. So it worked out fine.
And do you have another question?
I'll limit it to one.
Okay, and then she has some cool things to show us.
In other interviews I've worked on concerning people who went to one-room schoolhouses, they talked about how they would at times refer to it as learning by osmosis, because others, higher grades, were being taught things and they were hearing them. Mm-hmm. Is that something that did occur?
Yeah. I was always intent with what I was doing, but you couldn't help but often listen to what was happening, even though it was quiet, because she didn't want to bother the other kids. So you would sometimes hear things. But bring with what you brought up made me think of every morning it was Pledge Allegiance, and we had a flagpole, and we raised the flagpole, and we sang the national anthem. So we all did the Pledge of Allegiance. We all sang the national anthem every single day. And when the school sold, it was sold to the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the first thing they did was take the flagpole down. And I remember my father hissing. Oh, he was angry. But that's part of it, part of living. But yes, I agree. Yeah, and especially with music, because I would always be kind of mousy, but the other kids who knew the songs would sing out, and that kind of brought us younger kids into the fold a little. So and the artwork too, and the pollywogs.
And what? When did the school year start and end for you at that schoolhouse?
It was September through. It was first part of June.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And I only know that because I've got my report cards here, and I was looking at it the other day, and I said, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, the school year we know it as now really was cemented by, the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning had been set on that kind of that schedule, give and take maybe a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Which is, it used to be just 2 semesters if you go back to like 1850 or something.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
Very short time.
Right.
Because of the farming season.
Yep.
And attendance level.
Well, here's some pictures of kids from about 1953. That's me, of course. And this is Diane Bartholdi, whose dad was a teacher for many years. And this gal and I are still this group right here, the 4 of us are really close, and we do get together. I'll have a picnic once a year here. I have, this is what the report cards would look like. And you would get promoted, it would say. And there were things like deportment, attendance. I was never late. I was absent a couple of times, but I was never late, ever.
What would happen if you were late?
I don't really remember. I was never late. But those are my...
Good thing.
Yeah. So those are my report cards. And they got really specific here where it gets much busier, where they did more information, whether you were outstanding, satisfactory, or needs to improve. And then it had penmanship, drawing, spelling, citizenship. Do you play fairly? Is cooperative? Is courteous? Profits from suggestions, contributes to class activities, accepts responsibilities for your actions, exercises self-control, gives thoughtful attention, shows initiative. And then work habits, follow directions, works to capacity, uses time profitably, begins work promptly, finishes work, evaluates own work. So you are marked on all of those things. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, and then I have books that were kept in the book room. And this one is Fun with Dick and Jane, and it's got a 1-1, which means it was the first semester of the first grade. And I don't know where 2 went, but I do have these 2, which is, this is the first semester of the second grade in the second semester, and that's Friends and Neighbors and More Friends and Neighbors, and those were cool books. And I used these when I was teaching my grandchildren, and this one is the third grade, I believe. Yeah, this is the second semester of the third grade. And these books were going to be thrown away, so if you wanted to keep your books, you could.